Good morning. This is the sermon for June 28th, 2020, and I'm Pastor Patricia Hughes from Holy Cross. If you haven't read Genesis 22 yet, or if you haven't watched the dramatic reading, would you pause this and go do that? And then come back. Here I am. Christians and Jews throughout time are familiar with this phrase, here I am. It's Hineni in Hebrew. Followers of God used the phrase when God called them to service. Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Samuel, and Isaiah all respond to the call of God with these words, here I am. And that response is a complete sentence, a complete thought. It's like the response of a child to a parent. Although back a million years ago, when my mother would call to me after I'd been playing outside for many hours, I would tend to say, what do you want? Not here I am. So it's really the response of a beloved child, a child who has great respect for that parent. It's almost like a reporting for duty moment or an at your service moment. But this moment is not out of fear of reprisal. That's pretty clear. It's a trusting response. It's a refocus on the expectation of benevolent love from Father to Son, from God to beloved human. This story is a troubling event in biblical history, the binding of Isaac. Every time I read this passage, I remember the gentleman in a Bible study I attended in 1998 in Flagstaff, Arizona, where he said so succinctly, I resent a God who uses humans as object lessons. Oh yeah. That's one of the aspects of this narrative. Let me read some to you. After these things, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you. That's pretty clear. It says right in the first sentence, God is testing him, and Abraham says, here I am. God gives him his marching orders, but those orders include taking his beloved son and making a burnt offering of him. Ugh, I don't like it. When we get to this moment, the thoughts that come to me are often, why would God do such a thing? How can a God of love expect murder, child murder? If God will do this, what else will God do? So I don't like this story very much. I don't like the precedent it sets. And yet, it doesn't stop me from preaching it because there's some important conversation for us to have. I really like the here I am, the Hineni part. And this is why. Abraham says, here I am, again in this account. He has journeyed with his son Isaac. Isaac is carrying the wood that will eventually make the pyre for his own sacrifice. And he says to Abraham, Father, and Abraham says, you guessed it, here I am. And the story continues. As the boy asks, where is the animal that they will sacrifice? And Abraham answers, God will see to it. God himself will provide the lamb. It is Abraham's, here I am, that I notice here. The response of a child to a parent, open, loving, attentive. He's journeying to do God's will, and his heart is heavy at the thought that God will require his son's life, but he still responds with total love and responsiveness to his son. His son calls Father, and he said, here I am. Yeah, that's the good part. Relationships are tricky, don't you think? We as humanity have been coming face to face with the way we have bent relationships in our world to suppose that one racial group is inferior to another, that people of different gender orientations are less than one another? Baloney. In these frightening times of COVID-19 pandemic, we are coming face to face with inequality in access to health care. Have you seen the vast number of infected individuals in the Navajo Nation? Shameful. The centuries of neglect piled on that group of people in the Navajo Nation, in Americans, shocks me. Right now, many of our Holy Cross family are locked down, sheltering at home still after 3 months due to outbreaks and to their own vulnerability. What can we glean from the story of Abraham and the binding of Isaac as we search for our own significance? For me, it is that availability and that willingness to serve, that here I am, that I hear Abraham say both to his God and to his family. You and I know you can't get a vision for what God has for you, for what God needs you to do, until you make yourself available, until you report for duty with a heart full of willingness, like Abraham did when he reported for duty to his God, and like Abraham did when he reported to the call of his family. Here I am. It is my prayer for you and for me and for all of us that we will search for significance together. First, by making it clear that we will receive our marching orders from God as well as from our siblings in humanity, and that we are ready, open, and willing to do the service that we are called to do. Amen? Amen.